Hey folks, so I wanted to record myself lettering a page of a comic and do a sort of tutorial about how I think about a page. So not exactly techniques and stuff, but uh, like so when a letterer is doing a page, how do they think about the placements and the storytelling and stuff like that? So this is my first time doing this, so it might be a bit rough. I hope you forgive me for that. So this is a page from The Savage Shows number 4 that you're essentially getting a little preview of because the book's not released yet. I tried to choose a somewhat non-spoilery page, but this one doesn't have any sound effects or anything like that. It's just dialogue, but it's very interesting in terms of placements because the 9 panel grid works a certain way, and I think it will be useful to kind of show you how I think about a page like this. So I've already pasted in all my text. This is a really boring process, so I didn't want to show this. But this is sort of a very rough placement. This is gonna change before I'm done. And right now you can only see the text style that I use, the body copy font, which is Blambot's Might Makes Right. This is one of my absolute favorite fonts. So this book uses that as the body copy font because while this book is set in the 18th century, it is a very modern book and it's looking back at the time from a modern sort of like Indian perspective. So I wanted the reader to kind of be aware of the fact that the storytellers are not trying to kind of um, completely immerse you in the period, but like there is definitely a window between you and the period that's happening here. So obviously a lot of the hardest work has been done in terms of setting the style and stuff. You can see a few elements of the styles here on the left. I try not to clutter up my template too much with this. I actually have a separate template sheet that I use to actually paste in the balloons from, which I'll come to in a bit. But we are going to ignore all of these things. These are all the letter styles that I had in issues 1, 2, and 3. But this is just like this is going to be balloons. So the first thing I do is actually try and lay the text out in, stacking the text essentially. So lay the text out in the kind of the shape that the balloons are going to be. And I'm going to, like, I have a template to go off here. So see, these are the various kinds of balloons this template has. Just quickly talking about this is a template that I created around 6 years ago, and I've sort of modified it a little over the years, which is why it's a little messy. My newer templates are a lot more organized, but this is a template that I actually originally tried to create a sort of facsimile of the British letterer Tom Frame, which is why you can see these particular balloons that I don't actually end up using. But I kind of there were certain elements that I did in that style sheet which I enjoyed, which I've kind of taken over here on top. So these are the balloons that I'm going to be using, and everything else is going to come from this template. Um, yeah, so I'm going to start by stacking the text first, um, panel by panel. What I think about when I'm stacking the text is I try to keep the words together in certain units. We don't necessarily want to separate them out completely. Like a pleasant shape is definitely important, but it's also important to have a very clear readability to the balloons. So actually this one, I think the job is pretty much done for me. Both the balloons are going to go in this space here because this is Ghazi, the character here, and this is Hyder Ali, and this is going to be Ghazi speaking. So uh, Hyder Ali is essentially in screenwriting terms sort of dirty in the frame. Like this is, I think that's what they call this. Now I would like to keep this A campaign together. As I said, I like to, so for example, I'll have the numbers to sustain together. Like there's a certain readability, there's a certain rhythm that you'll get when you have those units of words together. But here I'm going to sacrifice that a little bit for the shape of the overall balloon. These look a lot more squarish than a standard balloon might. Sorry, I already did that. Yeah, but that's because the balloons I'm using, this as you can see here, are a little more sort of squared off than a standard balloon style. Now for this one, uh, see Ghazi is speaking in both these panels, so it's gonna be like I could sort of stack this one here and then this one here, but what will happen is that the reader's eye might slip on these. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep this one away from the top border here and this one away from the bottom border. Now you can also see that there's these two beads of sweat, which I would like to keep because they're part of the storytelling. So what I'm going to do here is maybe kind of put this here. So eventually the balloon will cover this bead of sweat, but not this one. Like you don't want just that one floating in the air. This is important. This is part of the flavor of this panel. So the reading order is going to go like this, then like this, and then here, I guess. So that's how I'm going to work. So this is actually Hyder Ali speaking, and this is Ghazi speaking. So there we go. See, I could do this, but I much rather have the next to the Zamorin so that you have a complete sort of reading unit. As I said, I'm going to shut up about that now. I'm just going to do that. Same here. I mean, it's not an essential part of the balloon making process because I'm pretty sure when people were hand lettering, they would definitely sacrifice those once in a while. But we do this digitally. We have the chance to go over those. So as you can see, I'm kind of changing the placements on the fly as well. Because these are all choices. Like the more choices I can make on the page, the fewer revisions I'm probably gonna have to do. And I've kind of customized my process to let myself make as many choices as possible. So that's actually why some letterers kind of paste all the text on one side and then drag it onto the page when they're actually doing the lettering. I actually like to, when I'm pasting in the text from the script, I actually like to do one draft of the placement so that the actual lettering process has another draft. And so then the more choices I get to make, the better for the book. So obviously, like I'm gonna do this page by page, and then I'm gonna go through the whole book once afterwards. So like what I'm doing right now might not necessarily be what you see in the book, but I'm pretty sure it's gonna be like, I don't know, close enough, I suppose. Yeah, I think. Yeah. So there you go. I'm gonna look at the whole page once, like there you go, tuck tuck tuck, then go there, then go there. Like this is gonna go here that way, and this guy's gonna go here, and this guy's gonna go here. Boop, 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 boop. This is gonna be a little complicated because this is Ghazi speaking, and he's off panel, and Hyder Ali is kind of turning to look at him, and this is Hyder Ali again. So I could maybe pull it like this or do this. I'll talk about it as I do this. So now I'm gonna actually go in and I'm gonna pick balloons from here. Oh shit, sorry about that. I wondered what happened there. Right. So you're gonna see me using a bunch of keyboard shortcuts as I go along. These are all actions that I've assigned keyboard shortcuts to, and I'll see, like, if I mean, they're kind of second nature by now, but if I sort of remember, I'll tell you what I'm thinking. Right. So, okay, so there we go. Yeah, so this is something that I do that I don't know if everybody else does, but I like to draw my balloon tails before I tweak them. I don't, um, I mean, a lot of letterers would do something like this. They kind of draw this, then this, then this. But I find that to be a lot more like sort of inorganic looking. Like this has a little, very human curve here that sort of is missing. So I draw pretty much all my balloon tails by hand, and then I tweak them. I mean, I don't just leave them as they are. Yeah. So in most of my balloon styles, you might see that I do something like this. The first balloon is always on the top, and then I kind of drag a little white shape here to kind of create the reading order. But for this book, I have been using something else, which is I actually let the balloons sort of ping pong back and forth as they feel appropriate, rather than having the first balloon always on the top. Um, you'll see me slightly moving balloons all over, but those are kind of to avoid tangents. Like I don't want this balloon to kind of touch this tangent here and stuff like that. This is like all these tiny little choices that a letterer will constantly be making. Right, so to connect the balloons in this style, I'm using this little thing, which is something that I basically stole from Tom Frame. uh, I hope the late Mr. Tom Frame will forgive me. Fantastic British letterer, by the way, lettered a lot of Judge Dredd, and had one of the most fascinating sort of balloon stacking styles that kind of went all over the panel, but remained incredibly neat and readable. So he would kind of connect his balloons using this little sort of like this tweaky, like just little thing there. So I've been using this for these Savage shows, and I quite like it. Then there we go. Yeah, so any fellow letterers watching this, you might be laughing at how slow and inefficient my working style is. Obviously, it's a little faster if I'm not talking about it, but yeah, it is still kind of a bit of a slow style, I suppose. I'm not the fastest letterer in the world, but yeah, I'm okay with that. Sorry about that. That's just illustrator acting up. I think it's been a hard day of lettering for my little fellow. Yeah. Oops. Sorry. So here's a balloon that kind of goes off panel. A lot of letterers use a clipping mask, something like this. I know. Yeah, something like that. But I find that if the sort of lettering plates move a little during production, you could have something that looks a little bit like, maybe not so drastic, but something like this. And I really don't like that. So instead of that, I actually subtract a tiny little shape from here, so that there's still a little black edge here. So if it shifts a little, you essentially still have something that connects the balloon to the panel border. I much prefer that, I would say. It must look like I'm sort of picking balloon shapes at random, but I'm kind of trying to imagine in my head what the final version of each balloon is going to look like. Yeah, so it's a bit tricky. I'm trying to avoid all these tangents going off. So see, now if I drew a balloon tail that kind of swept this way, you might end up with something that kind of goes on a tangent. I mean, of course, this is going to be colored afterwards, so the white of the balloon tail will probably stand out, but I would still rather avoid the tangent. So I'm going to take this. No, wait, let me just. Right, I want this to be red more towards the left. One of the reasons you kind of have to zoom in a little is because Illustrator's controls have gotten a little weird over the years. And, I don't know. I keep thinking that with every version they want me to have less control over my lettering. And I kind of really dislike it. But you can't really do anything about that, I suppose. Yeah, so see this one, like I know that this is going to be red like so, and then down here. So I want there to be sort of sideways continuity here, rather than a top to bottom, as I mentioned, because these have to be in these spaces. I don't want, like, so white is actually a fairly powerful element on the page. So right now the artwork is all black and white, but it's going to be colored, and the balloons are going to kind of stand out from the artwork. So they need to have a certain continuity within themselves, so that, let's say the coloring is very subdued or something, you don't want the reader to go into the wrong panel for no real reason. Like, of course, if you're doing something like that on purpose, that's a different thing, but you don't, I don't know, like, you're trying to create art, so intentionality, like, you want the final reading of the thing to be as close to what you intended as possible, right? Especially, like, I'm pretty sure the writer would want the page to read as they wrote it, rather than, like, any sort of flight of fancy from me. So I'm gonna try and make that happen. Like, that is a fairly incoherent point. Ooh, that's 20 minutes. Usually it takes me around 15 or so minutes to do a page, but I've obviously spent a lot of time explaining my thought processes to you. A lot of this is just intuitive at this point. I don't really think consciously about what I'm doing. What I do rather than that is just let myself have a few looks at the page, so that I can just make my choices as cleanly as possible. There we go. Right. Okay, so this is the tricky panel. So Ghazi is somewhere here. No, wait, he's kind of somewhere here actually. But okay, I think we can sort of cheat anywhere in this area, like this to this, because all of that's going to be as Ghazi. I would rather not keep this sort of tailless because he's right there. So that's what I'm going to do. Oh, sorry. Okay, I mean, I think I'm gonna do a first draft like this and see what Ram says. Um, Now, these savage shows, I mean, I've been working with Ram for 3 years now. So I kind of trust him to not be annoyed if something's really not working on the page. And like I'll basically see what he says about this, and then we'll probably come up with a solution. I wouldn't want to cross this. I mean, I also want to see what the colors look like because this glow is going to be quite important on this panel. So I don't want to cross that in any way. This is sort of an ungainly tall tail, but if I put this here, I think the read would be a little confusing and you'd be dragged this way for no reason. I can't put, I mean, I could put this here, but I would rather not cross this figure. Hmm, we'll see. So I think that's a great thing about having great collaborators is that you can sort of embarrass yourself in front of them and you can trust that they will catch you. So I can take this to Ram and say, buddy, I mean, let's figure this out. So actually, some of my emails to my collaborators, when I send them a PDF, have something like, I don't know, 500, 600 words of just notes that this is what I was trying to do on a certain page. I don't know if it worked out. Let me know. Here's something that you wrote it a certain way. I've done it that way, but here's another option you might want to try. Um, or sometimes I'll do like 3 drafts on a sound effect and send them all over and ask them to choose. Or like, uh, I mean, this is a fairly like, I mean, lettering to a degree is sort of the technical aspect of making a comic. There's craft there, there's art there, but a lot of this is just um, does it kind of read snappily? Does it kind of take the reader through the page without them kind of being taken out of it for no real reason? So you're making a lot of small choices rather than a bunch of big choices. The big choices already made in the style sheet and so on. So the small choices, like, they're all subjective. There's no real right or wrong here. I mean, I could see, for example, here you go. Like I could just do this, and I could pull these two here, or I could sort of pull this line here. But then, I mean, I'm fighting the tangents here. Also, I would have to sort of drag this over his chair, which I really do not like to do. What I could also do is maybe put this here. The tail goes this way, and then this one, maybe it goes this way, so that you have this eye line not being disturbed, which I think is actually quite important in the panel. So I think I'm going to do that. But I will be looking at these again till the whole thing goes to print, and just constantly try and give yourself as many chances to make a choice, and as long as all of those choices are active choices, I think one of them will stick. There we go. So that's either really, then boop 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 boom boop 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 boop. This is yeah, we might need to talk about this. And then boop 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 boop. Yeah. There you go. So that's page number 9 of the Savage Shores number 4. I think coming to you in April sometime. Wait, I'm just going to show you what this actually looks like with the blacks. Yeah, so this is something, so this is something that lettering over black and white is actually kind of a good idea, because then you're not relying on colors to kind of make your lettering stand out. So stuff like here, like I would not like to end this tail like this, because this kind of creates a tangent right here. So this little extension here is something that I tried to keep an eye on while I was doing it. But once the colors come in, I will try and make sure that everything reads as it should. Okay, that's 26 minutes. That's a long time. Thank you for your patience and hope you enjoyed the book. I might do a few more pages like this, maybe a couple of sound effect pages. Like as some of you might know, I actually draw my sound effects in Photoshop and I kind of port them over. And there's a reason for that beyond just the fact that it looks cool. Like there's a way, like you're kind of using storytelling and design constantly in comics, and I find that helps me make those choices. So maybe I'll choose like an SFX heavy page and explain my thought process as I go through it. I think I'm gonna just fix a few tiny little tangents before we end this whole thing. There we go. No. There. No. Actually, maybe it was better where it was. No. There we go. That works. Yeah, so I didn't want it to kind of stick to any of these little. You don't want to create those visual tangents that actually don't have any function. Like visual tangents can have a great function. So something like I don't know. Like I know a couple of artists who maybe use this and this drapery kind of to pull you down or something. Those are all fairly intentional tangents, and those would be good for you. But unintentional tangents, stay away from them. Just try to avoid them. Right? Cool. Thank you for your patience, and maybe I'll be back soon. Cheers. Bye.